I chose the Kansas State Masters of Agribusiness program for two reasons. The first is program flexibility. I wanted to be able to go to school while maintaining a full-time job. The second is that it's agriculturally focused. I intend on staying in the agriculture industry long-term, and this program complements that with a faculty and staff that know and understand my long-term objectives.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse's Phil Brasher, as well as this week by California Democrat Jim Costa. And Congressman Costa, we appreciate you joining us.
Well, thank you very much, Spencer and Phil. It's always good to be on Agri-Pulse. You folks do a great job of informing, the public throughout the country. American agriculture obviously is so critical to the not only our economy, but it's, as I like to say, a national security issue. Putting food on America's dinner plate every night is something that I think maybe a majority of Americans take for granted. They kind of think their food comes from a grocery store or their favorite restaurant or fast food place. And while they may get it there, that's not where it comes from. It comes from, farmers, ranchers, dairymen and women, cattle and pork and poultry producers that make up this incredible dynamic industry in which 4% of the nation's population is directly involved. And should we never forget those who work on the field, some of the hardest workers you'll ever meet in your life, and those in our processing facilities that are all part of that partnership that make up American agriculture. And as a third generation farmer, as I like to remind people, I don't take any of that for granted. And I try to be the very best advocate on behalf of American agriculture that I can be, given the lifetime experiences I've had. And of course, that's still my primary source of income.
Well, and as we look at sort of the broader congressional agenda here this week, we kind of went into it expecting it to be a very busy, very active week on Capitol Hill. We've got the debt ceiling conversation going on. We've got a government funding question to be answered here at some point between now and the end of the month. It's been answered in the House, but how that process unfolds is obviously yet to be determined. And then, of course, there's the reconciliation package being considered on Capitol Hill, and not the least of which is this infrastructure package that is being debated on Capitol Hill, and we're expecting, as we sit here right now, a vote on that piece of legislation on Monday, perhaps for sure early next week. But per an agreement with Democratic leadership and moderates such as yourself. But we've seen some, perhaps a little bit of back and forth with some of the more progressive members of the Democratic caucus. So I guess I'll just flatly ask the question, Congressman. Is that infrastructure votes on Monday going to pass?
Well, I certainly hope so. We, I think, have the support of the leadership. As you noted, there were 9 of us 6 weeks ago that really made it a point that, in fact, we bring this up. This bipartisan package got a very good support in the United States Senate. We've been living off the investments our parents and grandparents have made a generation or two ago. We've got to make the same kind of investments in water and transportation, in our ports and harbors, in broadband. This pandemic's taught us a lot of things, but one of them is that rural areas in America do not have the same access to broadband that they should. And so this bipartisan infrastructure package is important. The leadership has committed us, and in a rule that we all voted for 6 weeks ago, that it would come up on September 27th. So they have been good on their word before. I spoke with the speaker about that today on the floor, and Steny Hoyer has listed it to be voted on Monday night. We're working on getting the votes. There are a number of Republicans that do intend to vote for it. But, it's going to take I think, significant coordination to pass that bill on Monday, or if it spills over until Tuesday. But we certainly need it to happen. And then we'll work on reconciliation over the course of the remainder of the time that we're here.
Well, Congressman, let's talk about the reconciliation bill, because progressives, as you know, there's a group of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, or at least half of those are supposedly hard nosed on the infrastructure bill because they want to see an agreement first with the Senate on the reconciliation package. And what are the prospects for that? You've said you don't want to vote for anything that's not going to pass the Senate. The negotiations may or may not be going on to reach a deal there. But you've got Senator Manchin from West Virginia, doesn't like the size of this package, was concerned about the green energy provisions. And then you got Kirsten Sinema from Arizona, resistant some of the tax increases. When are we going to see a deal?
Well, I can predict one thing, and that is we're going to be in for a bit of a roller coaster ride over the course of the next week. But negotiations have been going on intensely for this last, I know I can tell you that because I've been engaged in those negotiations with our colleagues in the Senate and here in the House on two parts. One, the passage of the bipartisan reconciliation measure, and the second part, how we reach to an agreement, because since only Democrats will be voting on the reconciliation package, just as I describe it as a kind of a discussion among a family at a dinner table, and not all the family sees it the same way. And one of the points I've really been trying to make is that not only, as you noted, that I think many of us are prepared to vote for a reconciliation package that has 51 votes in the Senate. And as you pointed out, Senator Manchin, Senators Kirsten Sinema, both who I work with, but it's just not them. It's Senator Tester and Mark Warner. There are other senators there that are willing to let Joe and Kirsten, take the lead, but they share similar concerns. And as I told the White House yesterday and today, we need to get an agreement on the number. It's not going to be the high number that has been discussed by the press. And this president asked Senator Manchin to come up with a number that he thought he could support. And there's a lot of conversation going on, but it just seems to me that to deal with the expectation levels on reconciliation, we first need to agree upon a number, and then to figure out how we fit our priorities within whatever that number might be. And then, of course, that accounts for what the pay-fors ultimately are in terms of the top line that we can get by support by both the House and the Senate to pass it. The vote, margins are very narrow, 50-50 in the Senate and 3-vote margin in the House. And so we've got to establish a level of trust. The moderates who have been very focused on this for 2 months now, and help put that rule together that we passed 6 weeks ago with the unanimous support among Democrats, have been very clear about where we are. And we've been very careful not to to try to be constructive and not to take after any of our fellow Democrats. There are differences of opinion on spending and priorities and the revenues, and we've got to work that out.
Congressman, we heard Thursday on a section of that reconciliation bill. It has not been released yet, but we had a document that's circulating the Hill outlining how $28 billion in conservation funding would be divided up, including $5 billion for direct payments to farmers who plant cover crops. Talk about how this will affect the next farm bill. That's where this funding is intended to go. Well,
I have been a supporter of the conservation programs over the years. I think the next farm bill will be my 4th that I've worked on, and they're important. And so we've had some differences between the House and the Senate on how we try to provide support in the reconciliation package on the expenditures in the conservation title. I think we're pretty close to working out the remaining differences between the House and the Senate. I think that given the importance and the impacts, cover crops are certainly important, but we've got extreme drought conditions in significant parts of the country, obviously out in the West and in California. And the ability to take advantage of a cover crop, if you don't have water, is a real challenge. And I've tried to put money in the reconciliation program to deal with extreme drought conditions that we are experiencing in the West, and the fires. And the United States Forest Service budget as a part of this reconciliation, we plussed up their budget as well to deal with better forest management practices that have been, I think, overlooked in recent decades. But the conservation title has got to, I think, keep in mind the fact that a lot of the USDA programs, as it relates to, let me give you an example of specialty crops, I think are lacking in how we can address the extreme drought conditions that we're facing in California. So this is something that I've spoken with Secretary Vilsack about. We're trying to figure out how we address this in different ways, and the conservation title, I hope, will be a complement to that effort.
And there's, of course, there's $40 billion in the reconciliation package already for forest and wildfires. I'm sure that's going to be very welcome in California. I want to ask you about something that's not in there, something that farm groups have been very concerned about, and that is the president's proposal to tax capital gains at death, effectively nullifying the benefits of stepped up basis. Not in the package. Republicans are saying it'd still come back. Are you confident that is not going to be part of the bill or the agreement that the House and Senate ultimately reach?
Yes, I am confident. I'm a little disappointed that my Republican friends continue to bring it up in recent Ag Committee hearings. But, I led a letter 3 months ago on the issue of the stepped up proposal as it relates to the revenues that are being considered under the reconciliation, as well as capital gains and the 1031 exchange, as well as ensuring that family farms and family businesses were not penalized in the inheritance tax. And I think that Chairman Richie Neal and other members of the Ways and Means Committee listened very carefully. Congressman Mike Thompson, who chairs the subcommittee, has similar issues. After all, he represents SNAP and Sonoma, and critical part of California and America's wine industry. So I am confident that if they want to get with a narrow 3-vote margin passage of reconciliation, that they will not be a part of the issue. Now, make for good talking points by some of my Republican colleagues, but clearly the votes will not be there if they're included.
Congressman, we want to wrap things up today with a discussion, just sort of kind of zooming out maybe from the specifics of the infrastructure bill or the reconciliation package or government funding, and just kind of look broadly within your party, specifically within the Ag Committee on your party. We've seen, within the last couple of times that a farm bill was tried to be passed on the House floor, some division within the Republican conference that ultimately led to that bill going down on the House floor. And now we're starting to see broadly within the Democratic Party sort of a difference of opinion between moderates like yourself and some of the more progressive members. With a farm bill right around the corner, with a lot of things that the Ag Committee is going to need to do between now and then, what should folks like us be thinking about, just the broader understanding, the broader togetherness, or perhaps lack thereof, of House Ag Committee Democrats going into this next farm bill debate?
well, on your opening comment, zooming out, I guess, no pun intended, right? Because we seem to be zooming every day. But I think we've got our work to do. Got our work cut out for us on the next farm bill. But you think about it, and you noted the difficulty that my friend Frank Lucas had on the other side, and how we, and Colin Peterson did a really very, I think, collaborative effort with Frank and many of us working together to vote on that measure. And you might remember, I mean, with President Bush, the farm bill was vetoed, and we overrode his veto. So, there are changes in the dynamics that we see in both caucuses. That's clear. We have a lot of, from climate change to the impacts of closures of schools and restaurants, taking a complicated, complex food supply chain and turning it upside down. There are lessons to be learned here as we contemplate the next farm bill. And it's my hope that I'm going to do everything I can to build on the bipartisan efforts that we've had in the past that I just referenced. But we've got our work cut out for us, to be sure. And we've got efforts that I think we need to be mindful of with regards to our allies, who sometimes are our competitors as we look at European markets, but we look elsewhere in terms of, in California, as you know, 44% of our state's agriculture, the number one agricultural state in the nation, is exported. And so we have a lot of challenges as we look not only to our domestic markets, but our ability to compete in foreign markets. And with the impacts of climate change, realizing that there are a lot of parts of the world that are finding it increasingly more difficult to feed their countries. So we need to be mindful of all of that. And whether or not the farm safety net, in everything that's happened in recent years, really reflects the needs of the American farmer in farm country. So those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about as we contemplate the next farm bill, and the titles within those farm bills that have always attempted to provide a safety net. But I think we're also in reconciliation. I think there's an important role that American agriculture has and can continue to play in reducing our carbon footprint, and really being a contributing member as it relates to mitigating the impacts of climate change that determines in part, our growing seasons, our water availability, and how we deal with natural disasters that impact our ability to put food on America's dinner table every night. So those, I think, are things that we have to work together throughout the Farm Belt and the various farming regions in this country that are so dynamic. And you have such hardworking folks who are always trying to figure out how they can continue to do what they do best, which is put the finest quality and productivity of food products anywhere in the world for Americans to consume good, healthy diets that really reflect the importance of national security, because food is a national security issue. And the whole purpose of the Farm Bill, and as we reauthorize it, is to ensure that farmers can do what they do best. I know I'm a third generation farmer. That's still my primary source of income. And I want to continue to be able to be productive and stay in farming. And I know that's the way all farmers, ranchers, dairymen and women feel. They want to continue to do as they and their families have done for generations. And I want to do everything I can to make that happen.
So a busy week in farm policy, a busy week on Capitol Hill, and some interesting times lie up ahead for this industry and for the United States Congress. And Congressman Costa, we appreciate you stopping by to discuss that with us.
Well, thank you very much. And Agri-Pulse, keep doing the good work you do. We certainly have our challenges cut out for us. We're not out of the woods yet in the pandemic. Please, everybody get vaccinated. You know, you grow up on a dairy farm, you learn at a young age about herd immunity. It's, you know, we need to establish it here to, in fact, get ourselves out of the woods on this thing. Vaccines are readily available, yet we see in rural areas across the country uptakes in this pandemic with a new variant. So it's a very, very critical issue that we have to overcome successfully. And I'll continue to do everything I can and look forward to the next time I'm on Agri-Pulse to update farm country about all the good work we're trying to do. Let me just close by saying these are historical times, I believe, in our nation's history. When I think about the 20th century, I think about the 1960s with the civil rights movement and the Vietnam War, very, very challenging. I think about World War II, that was preceded by the Depression, that was so hard on rural America. Those were seminal moments in American history in the 20th century. I think we're living through a similar time today. The last 4 years, the next 4 years, historians will look back 25 years from now, and they'll make judgments. Did we make more good decisions than poor decisions? I can guarantee you we'll do both. But the challenge is that we make more good decisions than we make poor decisions so that we can ensure that America continues to be the great nation that we are, the strongest nation in the world, because the American public continues to do their best to ensure that what we do is a reflection of 245 years, the history of our democracy. So I didn't mean to go through that history lesson, but let us remind ourselves that we share far more in common than whatever differences we have as Americans. The politics some days seems to focus on the differences and the fear that people have. Let's focus on the common bonds that we share and the promise and hope of the American ingenuity and hard work that have always been the foundation on why we have been so successful over 245 years and why we are the greatest nation in the world.
Well, I think on that note, I think that's going to do it for this week. So for Congressman Jim Costa and Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.
Thank you, Spencer. Thank you, Philip.
Thank you.